Okay, so you're ready to dive deep with us. We're taking a look at this artist who's, well, he's kind of a puzzle. I mean, a lot of people really admire him, but there's this mystery around him too. Today we're tackling Bob Camblin. And wow, there's a lot to work with. We've got his own writings, a full biography, opinions
What?
about his work from different sources, even a YouTube discussion about one of his pieces, The Hidden Cycle. Oh, and some historical context too, to make things interesting.
That's right. Bob Camblin was a true original, what you might call an iconoclast.
Hmm.
Someone who goes against the grain. In the art world, that means he really shook things up, challenged the norms with his style, his subjects, even how he dealt with the whole art market. That, plus the fact that a lot of his work isn't easy to see, well, that adds to the mystique. And when his pieces do show up, people really want them. They're in high demand.
Exactly. So think of this deep dive as your crash course, your guide through this really interesting artist and his work. We're going to pull out the main themes, the surprises, and help you understand his creative journey, his way of seeing the world. It's like a shortcut to Bob Camblin's mind. Where do you think we should even begin with this?
Well, let's start with the beginning, right? Camblin's roots. He was born in Oklahoma, 1928. It's clear art was in his blood, with both his parents being artists. Imagine growing up surrounded by that. Even in high school, he was already the art director for his yearbook, so yeah, that creative spark was definitely there early on.
And it seems like those early years growing up in Ponca City during the 30s and 40s, those kind of seeped into his later art in some really interesting ways, like
Mm.
the Marland Estate, this big grand place, and the Pioneer Woman statue.
Mm.
They were major parts of that landscape. His biography actually mentions something cool. That Pioneer Woman statue pops up in his later work as VV, probably a nod to his mom, Viva Camblin.
It is fascinating to see how those early visual experiences, the things he saw every day, they maybe work their way into his artistic language without him even realizing it. Then, after he served in the Korean War, he reconnected with his high school friend, Forrest Harrisberger, at the Kansas City Art Institute. They weren't super close at first, but that shared time there, it really was key for Camblin's development as an artist.
And I've got to say, the sources we've got, they really emphasize Camblin's love of reading. This guy was a bookworm, delving into Emerson, getting into the wisdom of the I Ching. And then, of course, there's haiku and haiga. I don't know if everyone's familiar with haiga. They're these simple but like profound Japanese paintings, often paired with haiku poems. It's about capturing those small, fleeting moments of everyday life. And it's amazing how much Camblin's own work sometimes mirrors that same elegance, that focus on observation.
You can really see it. And after all that, something huge happened, a total game changer. He gets a Fulbright scholarship to Italy. Talk about opening up a whole new world of inspiration.
What would you say, though, what really stuck with him from that Italian experience?
Oh man, so many things. Obviously, seeing the masterpieces at the Uffizi Gallery, those Renaissance giants, that had to leave a mark. But also, the Capuchin catacombs in Palermo, those really got to him. I mean, imagine these abstract arrangements of human remains, skeletal figures almost. He called them mummies in his memory. It wasn't just morbid curiosity, though. It seems like it really made him think about how fragile the body is, and how even in decay, there's this kind of structure, this arrangement. It's a theme you see come up in his later, more abstract work. He loved the grandmasters, got into Impressionism, and Venice, which he called his Emerald City, it became this touchstone, a place he kept coming back to.
Right. And there's some really direct examples of how specific masterpieces inspired him, like Botticelli's The Birth of Venus. He used that as a starting point for a piece for KPFT radio in Houston. And his version of Primavera, it became his own masked flora, full of hidden symbols and meanings.
Yeah, and if you zoom out, it's amazing to see how Camblin's artistic voice, it was shaped by all these different things,
Hmm.
from those Oklahoma landscapes and landmarks to the ideas in Japanese art and the traditions of the Italian Renaissance. And before he started his, what we might call his wandering phase in 1976, he actually taught at a bunch of different places.
Yep.
So you can see how he was both sharing his ideas and refining them, building something really unique.
It's incredible to see how all these experiences, the Oklahoma landscapes, the intensity of those catacombs, the beauty of the Renaissance, how they all fed into this artistic vision that would later lead him to explore these deep philosophical themes. So let's get into some of those, shall we? Like the theme of Zen and impermanence, which is all over his work.
And a great example of that is his piece, Mushroom. It's got this organic form. It's all
Yeah.
about growth, but also decay, which perfectly captures that Zen idea of impermanence or emptiness. It's this basic idea that nothing lasts forever, nothing's fixed in the world.
But it's more than just a visual thing. That YouTube video, The Hidden Cycle, It goes even deeper with this. It connects the mushroom directly to I Ching hexagram 23, splitting apart. It's pretty mind-blowing, honestly.
Right. And it shows how Camblin, he layers these ideas that seem totally different at first. Like splitting apart in the I Ching, it's about how things have to break down before something new can come about. And the mushroom, it literally decomposes things. It's part of that transformation. It's like breaking down the old to make way for the new.
And there's that Taoist element too,
Mm.
right? In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu talks about the Tao as this effortless flow. And the way a mushroom just kind of appears quietly, it really echoes that.
It does. The mushroom, it's there for a bit, then it's gone. It reflects that balance, that harmony between destruction and creation that's so central to Taoism.
Mhm.
And for Camblin, it seems like embracing impermanence, it wasn't about sadness. It was about recognizing it as something that sets you free. It's just the natural way of things.
Okay, shifting gears a little here, let's talk about another big idea in Camblin's art. Seeing art as a question, a way to explore paradoxes. There's this review of his work, The Art of Everything, that really gets at this.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. It basically says that Camblin's art is full of hidden questions and philosophy. It can only give you partial answers, at best. Those drawings, they're paradoxes, they're contradictions you can actually see. He's got traps that don't trap anything, structures that never move, objects that vanish right in front of you. But they're not just visual tricks, they're like blueprints for ideas. He wants you to think about illusions, the traps we make for ourselves, like fear or being stuck in time, and this whole idea of stillness.
It's like he's using visual puzzles, not to trick us, but to make us think harder about big ideas.
Exactly. He wasn't giving answers, he was making us curious, making us want to figure things out for ourselves.
And that brings us to this other recurring theme, this idea of direct experience and intuition. Especially in that forward to then and the art of enlightenment, it's everywhere.
What was it about that foreword that really stood out to you?
Well, it talks so much about trusting your gut, your intuition, and how everything's connected. It's all about these cycles we go through. And it makes these cool connections like between Zen's idea of direct experience and expressionism in art. And then it ties the I Ching, which is all about constant change, to movements like cubism and abstract expressionism, where things are always shifting and evolving.
Right. And if you think about it, Camblin's art, it's not just something pretty to look at. It's like a doorway to seeing things differently, to being more aware. It makes you stop and think. It's almost like a spiritual practice, the way it demands your attention, your focus.
Yeah, he definitely wasn't afraid to break the rules. That term, iconoclastic, it comes up again and again when people talk about his style.
Totally. Remember, being an iconoclast means you're a questioner, a rule breaker. And Camblin did that in every way, like we said before. He went against the grain, whether it was his subject matter, his unique style, or how he dealt with the art market. He didn't care about what critics said or about making tons of money. He wanted to connect with people directly, on a deeper level.
Collaboration was huge for him too, wasn't it? Especially when he formed B&E Productions with those other artists, Earl Staley and Joe Tate. That was a big statement.
It really was. B&E Productions threw out all of these old ideas about like who created a piece of art and what art even is. They just start creating together, no plan, letting things happen organically. It went against this whole romantic idea of the lone genius artist, right? They were all about the process, bouncing ideas off each other, just making stuff together. And sometimes Camblin would even sign his work as anonymous, which shows you how he wanted to move past the ego, let the work speak for itself.
Man, that's pretty radical for an artist. It makes you realize how different his goals were. Then there's this whole Musha Volantes thing, this style he and Nancy Giordano came up with in the 80s. I love that name.
Musha volantes. Yeah, it's French for flying flies. Like those little floaters you see in your vision sometimes. They use these patterns of dots and dashes to create optical illusions. It messes with your perception, makes you work harder to make sense of what you're seeing. It's like the art of M.C. Escher or Salvador Dali, playing with how our brains see things.
Right. He's toying with how we process visual information. And later on, that idea of using puzzles and hidden meanings, it became even more central to his work.
It did. His later pieces, they're full of secrets, layers of meaning that you have to really dig for. He even started putting text in his paintings, like actual words. Sometimes they're clues, sometimes they're just distractions, almost like he's messing with us. One source even called it guerrilla warfare on a visually saturated, word-oriented culture. It's like he's throwing a curveball, a wrong answer, to see if you're really paying attention, if you get the concept.
So with a later Camblin piece, you're not just looking at it, you're trying to solve a mystery.
Yeah.
And some of those mysteries, they stayed unsolved for decades.
That's right. Viewing his work, it becomes this active thing, like solving a puzzle. Some are easy, some are super hard, and then there are those data problems that are meant to throw you off. It's all part of the challenge.
And there's this clear evolution in his work, too, a kind of metamorphosis, right? The biography says he moved away from those early social protest themes and started using more symbolic, more personal imagery.
Yeah, that shift happened partly because of artists like Cremoni and ancient Etruscan figures. And in the 70s, he got really into the whole circle of life: birth, death, rebirth. He even had a saying, think metamorphosis.
And we see these images popping up all the time. Puppets, scarecrows, skulls, glass boxes like reliquaries. What do you think those symbols mean?
They're often about change, about how fragile life is, about facing death. Like his Saint Bambola series that seems to reflect his own journey as an artist, his struggles even. It's like a myth-making machine, a way for him to work through things. And the Scarecrow series, he got that idea from Günter Grass's book Dog Years. It's about spring coming back, the promise of new beginnings after a dark time.
What about Camblin's views on being an artist? Like, what's the artist's role in society?
He had this really unique take on that. He thought artists were the only truly free people in society. His idea of an ecology of art is super interesting. He thought that if artists just did their own thing, followed their own vision without anyone telling them what to do, that would create a kind of balance, like a healthy ecosystem with lots of different species.
That's a cool way to think about it. He's saying the value of art is in all those different voices, all those individual expressions, not in following some set of rules.
Right. And he wasn't a fan of the art game, you know? All those galleries and museums, he felt like they often fell into the same traps as artists. He was all about faith and good work, sticking with it, turning those stumbling blocks into opportunities to grow. He even used the image of jars of water in his paintings to represent that.
And finally, Camblin the man himself. The biography makes him sound like a real enigma, a mysterious figure.
But it's funny because his friend Earl Staley says he was also super outgoing and a great storyteller in person. His studio sounds wild, like a wizard's den, full of weird stuff he collected, things he maybe traded for, and then there's that Mr. Peanut costume. He'd actually wear it sometimes. He even signs some of his art as Mr. Peanut or just anonymous. Talk about adding layers to his identity.
Sounds like you like to keep people guessing, you know? And the fact that he kind of disappeared from his Houston circle before he died, that adds to the mystery.
It does. Maybe he wasn't comfortable with his past. Maybe he wanted to reinvent himself, constantly changing, like a true metamorphosis, like that was mirrored in his art.
Okay, so wrapping things up here. If someone wanted to understand Bob Camblin, his art, his philosophy, what are the key things they should take away?
For you, the listener, I think the main thing is that Bob Camblin was all about exploring those big ideas, like impermanence. And he did it through his art. It was his way of asking philosophical questions. He was a rule breaker, pushing the boundaries of what art could be. He came up with all these innovative ways of expressing himself, like those Mouche Valendes illusions and all those hidden meanings in his work. And at the heart of it, his art was deeply personal, with all these hidden layers and secrets that make you think and that reward you for looking closely.
He really does make you look at art differently. And maybe even the world, right?
Yeah.
He wants you to be okay with ambiguity, to question everything, and maybe even find those moments of, I don't know, everyday enlightenment in the stuff we see every day.
And that leads to a really interesting question for you to think about. What parts of Camblin's philosophy or his art speak to you the most? How can you bring that same spirit of questioning and exploration into your own life? And like that YouTube video mentioned, what hidden cycles might you start noticing if you see the world through Camblin's eyes?
Whoa, that's something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Bob Camblin. What a fascinating, complex artist.